Well, good evening again, everyone, and thank you once again for joining me and sharing this time with me this evening. My name is Charles Logan. I am your host for the online Look into the Holy Book devotional. This devotional, by the way, was one that I tried to do on July the 21st or the 25th. Had some technical issues with some thunder and lightning, and I was blown off of the air. So for those of you who were not able to watch it, we're doing this one again this evening. It is called, Do Really Good People Need God? So once again, it is my pleasure to share this time with you. So we'll be looking at, Do Really Good People Need God? You know, one of the ministries that I just loved most and felt to be one of the most rewarding was when I served as a North American Missions Board certified chaplain at the Santa Cruz Valley Regional Hospital here in Green Valley. Unfortunately, the hospital has since closed, and that opportunity for ministry is now on hold. But for the 3.5 years that I served there, it was one of the most enjoyable experiences that I have ever been fortunate enough to have had. Now, I'm a person that has a difficult time walking up to and witnessing to a stranger. I know many of you out there feel the same way. However, I feel comfortable talking to people that I've never met before in an environment like a hospital. Perhaps because I kind of have a captive audience. You know, I have a lot of good memories from the time that I was an active chaplain. It was always good to share some comforting thoughts and to pray with Christians, no matter what denomination that they claim to be members of. I enjoyed praying with our Catholic patients too, and kind of felt a connection with them as fellow followers and fellow believers. You know, all of them seemed to appreciate the visit and our short and I hope uplifting and encouraging conversations. Of course, not everyone welcomed a visit by a chaplain, but as I said, most of them did. You know, I encountered all kinds of interesting people during my visits. I spoke with adherents of Islam, Buddhist, spiritualists, and some people with a rather obscure belief in the afterlife. I spoke to people who believed that they were going to come back as another form of life. You know, on rare occasions, I would meet an individual who would say that he or she was not a religious person, but was confident in his or her future. Now, as we talked, they would reassure me that they were really good people, concerned about others, generous, and served our community unselfishly. Honestly, in visiting with them, I was struck by an immediate like for them. They seemed kind and honest, and my first impression was that they were a sincerely good person. Now, on occasion, they would say that if there were a God, that he surely would not deny them a place in heaven, because they lived a good life, helpful and honest. There may have been a little bit of New Age or agnostic attitude there, but they sincerely believed that a gracious God would not deny them a joyous eternity. They would also allow me to pray for them and with them, and honestly seemed to appreciate it. Now, I found it easy to witness to people in that hospital environment. I was not even uncomfortable when I was denied entrance to a room, yet I found it particularly difficult to witness to someone who felt that they were fundamentally good people, deserving of whatever good was out there in the afterlife. Now, in their minds, they had already qualified for a life in eternity, if there was one in their mind, of course, because of their lifestyles and by virtue of their consideration for their fellow man. Even though I would share my beliefs in God and a redeeming Christ, they were comfortable with their own beliefs. Now, I'm sure that we have all encountered someone in our lifetimes that has had the same philosophy about the unknown world that exists beyond this life. Sometimes I've even been moved by the kindness and morality and likability of these individuals. Had you not known them, you might mistake them as being Christian, just by the way that they talked and the life that they led. Now, you might think to yourselves that they're truly good moral people, and I'm sure that they don't think that a belief in God is necessary for their future. So that's the notion that we're going to look into in our time together this evening. Once again, do really good people need God? And why? Well, maybe a better way to start the conversation is to ask the basic question: what is right and what is wrong? You're probably saying that you learned that fundamental difference between right and wrong from your parents many years ago. It is the first really necessary thing that allowed us to interact honestly with our parents and with others. Well, it may have been easy to know the difference between right and wrong back then. Life was much more uncomplicated then. But as we matured and our interactions with people allowed us to gain more experience, the difference between right and wrong became more blurred. Our perceptions of right and wrong changed. Now, right and wrong, or back then, right and wrong was easy, but today it's defined in the context of one's political and racial and social and moral beliefs. Take, for instance, the hot button issue of abortion. Depending on which stance you take, abortion is right. Considering the autonomy of a woman's body and her freedom to make her own decisions, then from the opposing view, it's right to believe that God creates life and we have no authority to end it. You know, one side says it's immoral to take the rights away from women, and the other side says it's the height of immorality to allow unrestricted access to abortions. You know, in our society today, there are so many issues that are right or wrong, depending on one's perspective. Where do we go to find out what is really right? And who do we go to establish what is wrong? In other words, who is the ultimate authority? If you said Robert De Niro or Barack Obama or any earthly so-called authority, you would be sadly mistaken, or even maybe disappointed. God is the ultimate authority, and the Bible is his holy word. So let's go to 1 Kings 3:9. It says, "Therefore, give to your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is to judge these great people of yours?" You know, man's opinions have a direct effect on the thoughts that drive our perspectives. Now, certainly we have to admit that our thoughts and opinions and perspectives change. I don't see right and wrong the same way that I saw it when I was younger, an idealistic college student. God is unchanging. You know, we have to be able to go to a source that is certainly unchangeable and consistent. And like I said, God is unchanging. He is consistent. He is the same now and in the past, and will be the same in the future. Your man cannot be known for anything that is consistent, except for maybe birth and death and taxes, and even those events are out of our control, really. So deep down inside. Man thinks that he is right, but he has a troubled history of wars and abuses perpetrated on his fellow man, and greed. His history is darkened by the only thing that can be considered consistent in our nature, and that is the desire for power and control. You know, Solomon knew this flaw in man when he wrote Proverbs 14:12. There is a way that seems right to man, but its end is the way of death. So once again, there has to be a standard by which we can have unwavering confidence. This standard has to be based on God's moral standard of living. Once again, man has proven himself to be untrustworthy. His standard of morality is changeable. What was moral to us during Queen Victoria's reign is not anywhere near the moral standard that we live by today. Unlike man, who sets his own standard for right and wrong, what is moral and what is not, based on his limited information of the world around him, and is influenced by the very world he lives in. On the other hand, God can't be influenced. He can't be bribed. He can't be bought or intimidated. He is all-knowing, and nothing gets by him. Therefore, his standards are unimpeachable and unchanging. No matter how man would undermine God's authority or try to create a God that conforms to his own agenda, he will never successfully challenge God's authority. We have confirmation of this in Galatians 6, verse 7. It says, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. For he who sows to his flesh will of the flesh reap corruption. But he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life." So let's look at our really good person again. That personable individual who everyone likes and who is there when you need help. And what about his perception of right and wrong and his standard of morality? No matter how much you might admire him for his good life that he leads, he is subject to having his own opinions. These opinions are subject to the influences around him. These opinions are faulty because they are inconsistent, as mankind as a whole is changeable. This type of individual wants people to like him. He is generally a good person who is influenced by attitudes and opinions of others, of course, and will often agree with them. He will say the things that people want to hear because he wants them to like him, even if his opinions differ. He is an excellent example of mankind as a whole. His honesty is based on the circumstances of the time and place, and the moral standards are consistent with the current mindset and the time and place that he lives. Take for another example our public theaters. There's no question that the moral standards that applied even several generations ago have deteriorated. Even the ratings have been watered down to where R-rated movies are what NC-17 movies used to be. And get this, G-movies are even now being tainted with agendas promoting alternate lifestyles, among other things. So a short answer to our original question would be yes, an unequivocal yes. Even good, moral people need God. And even more, everyone needs God. God, because he sets the ultimate definition of right and wrong and morality and immorality. So let's go back a bit in our history as Christians. God gave his children the law through Moses. You might say that the refugees from bondage in Egypt were certainly uneducated, subject to the influence of the pantheon of Egyptian deities and a pharaoh who even considered himself a god. They did not know Yahweh, nor had they known any right from wrong other than of slave to master. They had no standard in which to compare morality to live by. Even when Moses went up to Mount Sinai to receive the law from God, they resorted to worshiping a golden calf which substituted for their standard of morality and their understanding of right and wrong. The attitudes of his chosen people were rather primitive, considering their understanding of the Most High God. They needed a regimented, strict standard of right and wrong, and a consistent understanding of morality to live by. So God gave man the law to live by. One might ask, though, why did he incorporate his moral standards of right and wrong in a set of laws that were impossible to keep? Was it to teach his children through conflict and strife, through hardship, rebellion, or even through persecution and dispossession of their land? We certainly are not qualified to look into the mind of God and understand his will and long-term plans for his children. But what we can be confident in is that God set the standard by giving us his standard of morality representing the ultimate authority. But what about those who try to be law-abiding, good citizens, observe the rules, and live an exemplary life? The good people who do not feel that they need God. Is there anything in the Bible that speaks to this? Well, let's go to Romans 2:14, which says, "For when Gentiles who do not have the law by nature do the things in the law, these, although not having the law, are a law unto themselves." Now that says to me that even not knowing God's law of right and wrong by nature, man will enact laws that prevent chaos within a civilized society for the stability of that society. Where there is no law, there is anarchy. But as stable as this seems, there is the proverbial fly in the ointment. Because man's laws are enacted by man, and he is consistently untrustworthy. He is influenced by his emotions and his opinions and flawed perception of morality. God's laws, on the other hand, are perfect. For once again, he is the ultimate authority. So mankind is in a kind of a predicament here. He is incapable of setting a moral standard that is consistent for all man and all times. He by nature is changeable and inconsistent. He will always be influenced by the world around him. He will always seek power as a result of his greed, and he will always reverse course if he thinks that will advance his own will. So the original question was, once again, does a good person need God? Not only does a good person need God, but you know something? Every individual, man, woman, in this mixed up and corrupt and dishonest world needs God. We need him to set the standard for how we interact with our fellow man. We need him to be the ultimate authority on what is good and what is bad. And we have to be able to understand what God's morality is so that we can measure our own. So in conclusion, in a way, we are still helpless, primitive refugees from our own cultural bondage. We, like the original children of Israel who fled their Egyptian overlords, need discipline. and a strict code of conduct to live by. And we are incapable of setting that standard by ourselves. We need God to guide us and to teach us his unchanging understanding of right versus wrong. We, by our very nature, are too self-centered to toy with perceptions based on our own changing opinions. In other words, we can't do this on our own, and never will as long as man shares this planet with the powerful and negative influences of evil. So once again, in conclusion, because the devil, unlike an unchanging God, adjusts to man's inconsistencies and plays very well with his inability to define good from bad in the context of his own flawed human nature. His only hope is the unchanging nature of God and his example of morality. Well, that concludes our second attempt at this July 25th devotional, and I hope that you have gleaned something from it, because I certainly enjoy our time together, and I look so forward to our next Thursday together, when I will be talking about the subject of it's okay to doubt God. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining me this evening, and I am your host, Charles Logan, for this edition of the Look into the Holy Book devotional. Thank you. It is my honor and pleasure to share this time with you, and hope to see you next Thursday. So may God bless all of you, and good evening.